Here's something I see all the time with coaching engagements. A coach works with the same client for months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Great sessions, meaningful conversations, real breakthroughs happening. But when I ask the coach, how does last month's insight connect to what you're working on now? They look at me like I've asked them to recite the periodic table backwards. Each session exists in its own little bubble, and that's a missed opportunity. So here's the thing. When sessions feel disconnected, clients lose something really important. They lose the sense that their work is adding up to something. They come in, they explore, they have insights, they leave. Next session, different problem, fresh start. It's like reading a book where every chapter has no connection to the one before it. You might enjoy each chapter on its own, but you're not experiencing a story. The most powerful coaching relationships feel fundamentally different. There's momentum, there's meaning that builds over time. ICF added this marker in the 2025 update, and it's worth paying attention to why. Here's how ICF frames it. Partners with the client to integrate learning and sustain progress throughout the coaching engagement. Notice those words, throughout the coaching engagement. ICF is asking you to think beyond individual sessions. This isn't about what happens in this conversation right now. It's about how this conversation connects to last month's breakthrough and next month's challenge. Integration and sustained progress. That's the focus here. I love thinking about coaching relationships as chapters in a book. Each session should feel like it builds naturally on what came before. The client walks in with a challenge, and that challenge exists in the context of everything you've explored together. Maybe they discovered something about themselves 3 months ago that's directly relevant to what they're facing today. When you help them see that connection, you're not just solving today's problem, you're helping them understand their own development arc. And that's a skill you can intentionally develop. Now here's where it gets tricky. As a coach, you see patterns emerging across sessions. You want to help the client connect the dots. But the client owns the agenda. They walk in with what matters to them right now, and that might have nothing to do with what you noticed last time. So how do you hold both of these? You want continuity. They own the agenda. The answer is integration, not control. Your role is to create space for connections without forcing the agenda toward your observations rather than theirs. Let me give you some practical ways to create this continuity. First, reference previous insights when they're genuinely relevant, but don't force it. If something from an earlier session naturally connects to today, name it. If it doesn't, let it go. Second, pay attention to themes that keep showing up. When you notice the same pattern across multiple sessions, you can gently name it when the moment is right. Third, ask questions that invite the client to make their own connection. How does this relate to what you discovered last month? And finally, give them room to do the integrating themselves. Your job is to open the door, not walk through it for them. This really comes down to mindset. When you sit down with a client, you're not just helping them with this week's problem. You're supporting their ongoing development as a leader, as a professional, as a person. Each session contributes to a larger transformation arc. Think in terms of journeys and trajectories, not isolated events and disconnected moments. When you hold this mindset, every conversation naturally becomes part of something meaningful and cumulative. You start to see how the pieces fit together, even when the client hasn't connected them yet. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Say you've been working with a client on delegation for 3 months. In month 1, they discovered that a fear of being seen as incompetent was blocking them from letting go of tasks. In month 2, they experimented with small delegation steps and noticed what triggered that fear. Now it's month 3. They come in stuck on a specific delegation decision that feels unusually difficult. Here's where you create the connection. You might ask, how might what you learned about that fear of incompetence be showing up in this decision? That question invites them to integrate their own learning without you doing it for them. A few things to watch out for here. First, don't treat each session as completely independent. When you act like nothing came before, you miss opportunities to build momentum. But here's the flip side. Don't use continuity as an excuse to set the agenda. Just because you noticed a pattern doesn't mean you get to steer the conversation toward it. Third, stay alert to themes and patterns across sessions. If you're not noticing what keeps showing up, you're leaving valuable insights on the table. And finally, don't force connections that feel artificial. If the link doesn't genuinely serve the client's current exploration, let it go. So here's what I want you to take away. Your job is to help clients see how each session builds on previous learning and contributes to their larger development arc. Their job is to own the agenda and do the integrating. They connect the dots in ways that are meaningful to them. When you get this right, the coaching relationship feels like chapters in a story, building toward meaningful transformation. Creating continuity is one piece of the puzzle. Let's talk about how you actively partner with clients to sustain momentum over time.